snows have passed, the winter's gone. Beautiful flowers grow to pick for my love. Spring is here, flowers are ripe, giving their fragrant signs of life. Spring, 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 begins the life of love. Spring, 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 awakes the hearts of men. Birds chirp their song, I sing along, feeling the sweet air profoundly with sound. Notes ring afar, reaching my love, filling her heart with sounds of spring. Spring, 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 begins the life of love. Spring, 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 awakes the hearts of men.
Hello, Brubs. We're back with what the fuck is this book called? Oh yeah, Vampire by Heinz Ewers. This is chapter 7. Chapter 7, Crystals. Ernst Rosius met him at the station. How are the detectives? Frank Braun asked. Fine, thank you, the secretary said. They will be glad to see you back, Doctor. Dead or alive. He stepped back, staring at his superior. Really? More dead than alive? You look... Never mind, say it. Like sour beer, the secretary burst out. Frank Braun thought, if it is nothing worse, he had been forced to stop on the way, spending 3 days in bed in a St. Louis hotel, but the rest had not done him any good. He still felt just as tired, just as worn out and empty as before. Lottie Van Ness was not nearly as worried as Rosius. Frank Braun thought, she only pretends because she doesn't want to scare me. That's silly, because there are mirrors, after all. Besides, it doesn't scare me at all. That night he lay on the sofa with his head in her lap, while she took his hands in hers and stroked his forehead softly. He told her about Mexico and about Pancho Villa. She asked, his name was Colonel Pearlstein, you say? Hello, bruvs. He smiled. It was a fixed idea of hers that the Jews would help Germany, and she believed that this Jew, Pearlstein, would lead the Mexicans into Texas, and in that case, the English and Italians, the Russians and French would get no more war supplies, and then Germany must win the war. And if Villa burns down 10 Yankee cities, Frank Braun thought, it won't really help. But he did not say it. He let her dream. He felt quieter and stronger. His brain cleared. When her slim hands touched him, he softly kissed the tips of her fingers. Where is your little knife? She asked. He gave it to her, and after a moment's hesitation, she opened it quickly. It is clean, she cried gaily, but in the same breath, she sighed. Poor boy. What is that thing supposed to be? He asked. Is it a magic mirror? Does it get spots when I am unfaithful to you? She nodded. Yes, it gets spots. But it is not a magic mirror. Its spots are perfectly natural. Any knife would do me the same service. She put it back in his pocket. Keep it. Someday it will be bloody. Hello, bruvs. She got to her feet quickly, sealing his lips with a kiss. Come, dear, dinner is ready. They ate in silence. He reached for her hand across the table. He felt at home now, quiet and peaceful. And he also felt as if he had never held another woman in his arms, only her, Lottie Levy. She had made herself beautiful for him. He had not noticed it before. She looked radiant and exciting. She had never been so beautiful before. Once she asked, "Are you glad to be back?" He nodded. She dropped raisins in the champagne glasses. The raisins filled with air and floated like little silver fishes on the golden wine. They fished them out with their tongues, held them between their lips, and munched them from each other's lips. Come, she said. He sat up in the big bed, rubbing the sleep from his eyes. The sun shone warmly through the yellow curtains. What time could it be? He closed his eyes, trying to think, trying to remember the stray thoughts of this night, but he could remember only the dream he had had. He had dreamed of the dancer, the Goyita, Dolores Echevarria. He had dreamed of her as she danced the rumba, of her neck and her breasts, of the tiny red wound with the single drop of blood. No, that was not true. He had not seen her in his dream. He had not seen her eyes. Oh man, Mary yawning. And he had not seen her dance. He was adding that now. He was daydreaming. He had dreamed only of her gleaming white breasts and of the small blood red scar. He laughed and opened his eyes wide, and it hadn't even been there. He looked around. There was a dark red spot on the white pillow, a little blurred. Had he seen that while he was half asleep? Was that what had caused him this dream? He jumped out of bed. Where was Lottie? Her clothes lay scattered around the room, on the sofa, on chairs, and on the rugs. Her shoes and stockings, corset, and dress. He took a bath, dressed, and went into the dining room. The maid brought him tea and asked him to wait. Madame was dressing. So he had breakfast alone, and it tasted better than it had for weeks. Had he really been sick and tired? Yesterday, he could not imagine how he had felt yesterday. He was feeling so well and fresh now. He went into her library and read the titles of the books piled over her desk. Sancti Petrus, Epiphany, Episcopi, Cypri ad Diodorum, Tyri Episcopum, Quae erant invest, Uranus? Uranus. Ah, that was about her breastplate. She takes it seriously, he thought. There was Franciscus Ruis's? Ruis. I guess that's Ruis. Ruis's curious book and the treatise on precious stones by Bishop Marbode of Rennes. He also saw the Hortus Sanitatis of Johann of Cuba, the grand lapidare of Jean de Mandeville's, and the famous Speculum Lapidum of Camillus Leonardus. On a chair by the desk lay Cardano's book and the works of Conrad von Megenberg. On the shelves he saw Josephus, Gonellus, De Boot, Volmar, Finot, Kunz, Morales, and many other authors, all the men who had written about precious stones. On the other side of the library there were whole shelves full of volumes dealing with prophecies, secret revelations of the future, horoscopes. There was Albertus Magnus, of course, the sorcerer's book of Ragiel, Plotinus, Jamblikos, Dionysius, that's not how you spell Dionysus, but Dionysios, the Areopagite, Paracelsus, Eliphas Levi. He noticed the surprising number of Gnostics, but there were also representatives of the Indian, Babylonian, Talmud, Jewish, and Alexandrian school, as well as Christian mystics. And in all the books there were bent corners, reading marks, pencil notations on the margin. What is she looking for? He wondered. He did not wait for Lottie. His secretary telephoned and asked him to come home to speak to a man who was waiting for him. He drove to 23rd Street and shook hands with the detectives before the door. Then he talked to a man from the committee and gave him a short report. In the evening, he met Ivy Jefferson and her mother at the Claremont on the Hudson. Mrs. Jefferson's beau, the English consul general, was also there. You look splendid, Mrs. Jefferson said, sparkling like champagne. He smiled. He must have changed considerably in the past 24 hours. Only yesterday he had looked like sour beer. This page ripped? Oh, it's just a piece of the book. Where the hell was I? Thank you, he said, and you also seem. It must have been marvelous on the West Coast, she interrupted. It is a shame that we haven't been there for so long. I hope you accomplished your work in California. California? He felt Ivy's foot on his. Of course you did. You sent us such pretty postcards from Los Angeles and San Diego. He returned a slight pressure of her foot. Yes, of course, everything went beautifully. California is a lovely place. As they were leaving, he saw Eva Lockman step out of her car, accompanied by two women. She gave him a quick glance which he failed to understand and brushed past him. But then she changed her mind, turned around, and looked at Ivy Jefferson with a mocking smile, measuring her from head to foot. Do you know her? Ivy asked. He nodded. The car drove up, and he helped Mrs. Jefferson in. Then he turned and offered his hand to Ivy. No, she said, Mother is driving with her beau. I have my new car here. I wanted to show it to you. She climbed in her big new Packard, took the wheel, and asked him to sit beside her. Then she followed her mother's limousine. You were in Mexico, she said, so you spied on me. No, I didn't at all. It was the easiest thing in the world to find out. Oh, she smiled. Didn't you send those few letters for me to your secretary? With the pretty heading somewhere? He put the envelope into another envelope and sent the letters to me just as you had ordered. But I called him up from Newport and asked him to telephone me every time a letter came for me. And the next time? You told him that you were coming to town, he finished her sentence, and asked him to luncheon. Where? At Delmonico's, of course. He was to bring me the letter. He did, and 3 minutes later I knew where you were. And what else did he tell you? Nothing else. Unfortunately, I could not get any more out of him, and I finally flirted very nicely with your kind permission. He made a slip in the beginning, but afterwards he was a bitter disappointment. I told everyone that you were in California. He whistled. Why didn't you tell them where I was? It is no secret. I just wanted to see a bullfight again, that was all. And you needed almost 10 weeks for that? Ivy persisted. Certainly, he said calmly. I had to wait until there was one. She leaned over to him. You are lying. To you? He pretended to be hurt, trying an indignant tone. But she laughed at him. Of course, to me. You went there as an agent for your country. The newspapers are full of stories about how the Germans are working down there against us. Child, he said, and this time his voice was serious, your newspapers are full of lies. The Germans in Mexico are glad to be left with whole skins. The revolutions which Wall Street financed have reduced them all to beggars. The one who has been stirring up Mexico and who is doing it still is the Yankee. She countered in a superior tone. Against himself? Yes, that is what it amounts to in the end. He said no more because he felt he could not convince her. The belief in astrology was the only thing that Lottie Van Ness had acquired in America. Her library, her studies, her research, her struggling through all those musty volumes was European, German, and Jewish. But every day she went to one of the many charlatans who sold her empty phrases for large sums. It was the thing to do in fashionable New York society. Lottie Van Ness had hundreds of horoscopes, each one more stupid and childish than the others. She would glance quickly through them and tear them up, and yet she would go again, order new ones. One day Frank Braun said to her, There is one man, the only person in New York who can really cast a horoscope. I met him on the street yesterday. He is a friend of mine whom I knew in Europe. He is the only one who is not a charlatan and who knows something about it. But he will tell you from the beginning that it is all nonsense. Take me there, please, she asked. Lottie Van Ness called for him the next morning. Well, what is the name of your magician? Baron Otto von Kachel, university professor, MD, and PhD. University professor, she mused. Yes, in southern Germany, in Heidelberg. I believe, or in Freiburg, but that was before my time. When I first met him, he was a physician in a resort in Thuringia. Frank Braun told her the story of the man while they were driving through New York, and he thought that he could tell her hundreds of similar stories, all different in the middle, but identical in the beginning and in the ending. The beginning, a promising career at home, good family, golden youth, work and joy, then the storm that drove them over to America, and the ending, miserable defeat, slow starvation in this monster city, a gradual decline to lower and lower levels. This man was a scholar, a magister, and doctor. Already as a student, he had written for scientific journals. Then he took his doctor's degree, was soon made an associate professor, and finally professor. He was well off and married a fair haired young girl who adored him and took care of him. His path seemed smooth and straight. Suddenly, he lost his chair at the university and had to leave town overnight. Something had happened. There were whisperings, but no one mentioned anything aloud. People wanted to give him every possible opportunity to make a new start. He moved to a summer resort, continued his research, and acquired a worldwide reputation as Egyptologist and Assyriologist. He spent his money on rare antiques, but as a physician, he acquired in a short time an enormous practice which enabled him to indulge in every possible luxury. Only he did not care for any luxury. He did not drink, did not smoke, did not gamble, or travel. He never looked at a woman, not even his own. He was not interested in anything but his hieroglyphs. He spared neither time nor money on his Egyptian research, on which he worked day and night. Then he was arrested and tried. He had raped one of his patients in his office. At first he denied it, but later, when he was behind bars, he admitted everything and stopped trying to defend himself. He was granted every possible facility, was allowed all the books he wanted, and was permitted to do research work. So he wrote a monumental work on Assyrian horoscopes. The authorities even went so far as to permit him to resume his profession. He settled in another city, and in a short time he had again a splendid practice. It lasted 2 years, then the district attorney received a new complaint. It was exactly as before. He had abused a woman while she was under ether. Young, beautiful? Oh no, she was more than 60 and very ugly. The district attorney was a friend of his and wanted to save him. He had a warrant sworn out for the next morning, and that evening he went to the inn and talked about it. All the notables were sitting around, the judge, the physicians, all friends of Dr. Ketchel. Ketchel? I don't know how to say it. Ketchely? Think German. I don't know. What next? Prison for many years or an insane asylum for life? One of the men went to see Dr. Kachel, the same night and told him the professor was perfectly reasonable and not at all insane, but when the talk came around to what he had done, he merely shook his head. I don't know anything about it. The same night his friends helped him to get away, and 2 days later he was on the ocean. And now he had been in New York for many years. The money which his wife brought with her when she followed him had been used up a long time ago, and his antiques had to be sold far below their value. His escapades in Europe were no obstacle here. No one knew anything about them. But he could not begin as a practitioner again. He would have had to take new examinations. Thousands of German physicians had done that, and it would have been easy for him, as for all the others. But he did not speak English. He read hieroglyphs, cuneiform writing, and runes fluently. He understood Phoenician, Ethiopian, and Coptic, but his English was terrible, and he was afraid of himself. What had happened to him 3 times before might it not happen again any day? He was afraid of practicing medicine, afraid of the demon that slumbered within him. So he plodded along, still writing erudite papers for scientific journals, still a corresponding member of every possible learned society. But in order to make a living, he had to take whatever the moment offered. He invented a new gold mixture for dental fillings and sold it to a dentist who had it patented and made $20,000 on it. Dr. Cashel himself received $50 as his share. But even that was a rare stroke of luck. For a living, the erudite baron, but even that was a rare stroke of luck. For a living, the erudite baron made urine analyses, day in, day out, for doctors and quacks at $1 each. Frank Braun and Lottie walked down the steps from the street, 17 steps into the basement where Dr. Cashel had his laboratory. The poor professor was sitting on a backless chair among tumblers and retorts and flasks and test tubes and vials that shone in an unnatural ultraviolet light like poisoned moonlight. He was bent forward, his hands on his knees, as if asleep. He had an ugly, hollow-cheeked face, and his gray, unkempt beard and dirty, grizzled hair added to the picture of decay. From behind steel-rimmed glasses, his near-sighted yellow eyes peered at the intruders. "Hallo," Frank Braun called out to him. "How are you?" The professor jumped up and held out both hands. "Nice of you to drop in. I am glad to see you. I found out what you asked me the other day. I wrote it all down for you." He hurried across the room and took up a manuscript from a table in the rear. "Here," he cried. "Here you have it all. Your voodoo priestess, the Mamaloi, must be a human personification of the Coptic Berzelia. And Berzelia, much further back, of course, is the wife of Moloch and was called Basilia by the Greeks. I assure you we have a straight line. No, not straight, a very crooked line, as a matter of fact, from the Babylonian goddess Labartu down to the child sacrifices in the Haitian voodoo cult, and the strange inversion that the blood-drinking Astarte herself gives her blood when Frank Braun cut him short. "Thank you very much, Professor. You will tell me about that later. Today I want something else from you. This lady." He introduced Mrs. Van Ness. Cashel turned around and looked at her. He had not noticed that there was a woman in his cellar. He shook hands without greeting her, greatly disappointed that he had been interrupted in his lecture. "Come now," Frank Braun placated him. "Don't be angry, Professor. I told Mrs. Van Ness that you are the only man alive who can cast a horoscope, strictly scientifically." "What?" the little man cried. "Scientifically? To examine old horoscopes is science, but to make new ones is always a fake. Aren't there enough fools in New York who get rich by casting horoscopes for still bigger fools? Why do you come to me? You have the wrong address. Right next door lives one of these magicians. You can see the limousines in front of his door all day long. I can mix you a toothpaste if you want, or give you something for eczema, or I'll analyze your urine. That is honest work. But don't get excited, Baron. It isn't worth it. You don't have to do it if you don't want to." "No, I don't want to," the professor shouted. All right, Frank Braun pacified him, adding quickly, "This is a big laboratory. A pity you have no daylight." "Do you live here, Professor?" "No," he snarled. "I have a room on 40th Street. "One room for you and your wife? How is she?" "Rotten," the professor hissed. "Is she sick?" Dr. von Cashel shrugged his shoulders. "That doesn't surprise you, does it, considering the life we lead?" Now Frank Braun had him where he wanted him. He said slowly and with emphasis, "Your wife is sick, undernourished probably, just as you are, and you have the courage to refuse work that would bring you money. False professional pride?" The professor drew his head into his coat collar and then poked it out like a turtle. "Money, you say? How much money? How long would it take?" The professor thought for a moment. "If I am permitted to work thoroughly and to look up old charts," he took out his handkerchief, cleaned his glasses, and wiped the perspiration from his brow. It will take 3 months at least, he continued, perhaps 4, if I am to do it properly. I'll pay you $10 a day for 4 months, Mrs. Van Ness said. Dr. Cashel made a rapid calculation in his mind. But that would be more than $1,200, he stuttered. She nodded. Do you accept? Yes, he cried. Then he began hesitatingly and clumsily. Doctor, I have known you for 10 years, but we never had any business dealings. He cleared his throat, tried to work up his courage, and began again. You see, I have been cheated of my reward so often in this country. His voice broke. It became hoarse and very bitter. Oh, always, always. Lottie Van Ness took out her checkbook, wrote, and handed him the long slip of paper. Here, Herr Professor, please don't begin until you have cashed it. He nodded mechanically, without comprehending. He folded the check and put it carefully away in his wallet. Then he took a pencil from the table and walked over to the whitewashed wall. He drew a big, clumsy circle and the 12 houses in it. Does the lady know what a horoscope is? He inquired. Frank Braun laughed. I hope so. She must have had 100 from your competitors. They are just as good as the one I am going to make for you from the stars, whether I just sit down and tell you something that I make up in 5 minutes, or whether I find out for you by laborious methods from old Assyrian rules what the stars indicated at the hour of your birth. It amounts to the same thing in the end. It all depends on you, madame. Do as Alexander the Great did, or Jesus of Nazareth. Then your horoscope will come true, whether it is prepared by me or by the cheapest fortune teller in Coney Island. He had regained his equilibrium. Will you listen to me, please? He pleaded. For a quarter of an hour only, I must tell you what you will get for your money. Sit down, please, sit down. He drew up a couple of rickety chairs, and for Lottie he found one that was whole. His yellow eyes shone with joy at being allowed to lecture about something in which he was interested. It was the joy of the savant in having others partake of his knowledge. He explained the horoscope in detail, beginning with the age-old laws of the Assyrian astrologers and going on to developments added by the Babylonians, Phoenicians, Egyptians, Ethiopians. He mentioned the role which astrology played in the life of the Arabs, Greeks, Aramaeans, and Persians, and the strange interpretation of the Alexandrine school. He told at great length and yet clearly why horoscopes were generally correct in the early ages of history. At that time, everybody believed in the eternal laws written in the stars. The principles of this science, a nomad probably created them somewhere in the desert. Then they were there and became sacred and conventionalized in the course of centuries, just as the alphabet or the numerical system. In those bygone ages, people believed so firmly in the message of the stars that the historians, led by Herodotus, wrote their history by it. You will often find the passage in Herodotus, can't say it now, Herodotus's book. The history of these people, as handed down by their tradition, is this, but that is wrong. In the stars it is written differently, and then he proceeds to tell the history of the people as it is written in the stars, not as he heard it on his travels, not as he had heard it on his travels, but many thousands of years ago man learned to calculate the position of the stars. For the past as well as for the future, man was not interested in the present. He was interested in what had been, and more so in what would be. The story of Christ stands written in the heavens in all its details, and one can read it there now just as easily as one did thousands of years before his birth. It is not engraved in clearly legible cuneiform on the large stone in the Berlin Music. Jesus Christ. Is it not engraved in clearly legible cuneiform on the large stone in the Berlin Museum? All one has to do is to calculate the position of the stars for a particular year, and once or twice in a century there comes a strange and unusual constellation. It was one of these that changed the whole world in the 4th century BC. Someone will come out of the west, a young hero on a white charger. He will conquer huge realms, and the gates of the cities will be opened to him, and armies will flee before him like chaff before the wind. And he came, Alexander the Macedonian, who fulfilled what the stars had prophesied. A Russian by the name of Murajev checked up the dates and found them correct to the last detail. Why? Because the prophecy was known all over the Orient, and because people believed in it, because people had been waiting for the conqueror for many years. That was the reason why cities opened their gates to him. Why the huge armies of the Persian king fled before a handful of Greeks. Alexander played his role as the emissary of the stars by fulfilling as well as he could all that he had been prophesied by the astrologers. He knew these prophecies as everyone else did, and therefore he took the trouble to make the pilgrimage to the temple of Ammon and also to cut the Gordian knot. The only flaw was that Alexander remembered a little too late his role as the hero who had been promised to mankind. We know now that he was a man in his 50s and no longer a youth when he marched his army against Persia. Perhaps he made up his face to deceive the people, but whatever he may have done, he succeeded in hiding his age. In the history books all over the world, he is still described as the young, smiling, radiant hero, because it is written in the stars, and the stars are right, not reality. The other prophecy of tremendous importance was about the Messiah. The people of Judah were feverishly excited in those years because the time predicted in the stars had arrived, and now he was there. The prophet of God was in their midst. He appeared, but he was not the only one. There were several like him. Johannes went into the desert and baptized with water, just as Jesus did. And Josephus, the so-called Christ of the Jews, who appeared on the scene a little later, led exactly the same life as Jesus. Why? Because thus it was written in the stars. Again and again it is mentioned in the Bible that Christ did this or that, so that there be fulfilled what has been written. Written where? In the stars. Their belief in the stars was so strong that the Alexandrian school did exactly what Herodotus had done. They corrected the story of the apostles to conform to what the stars had prophesied, and thus the strange story of the presentation of the 12-year-old Jesus in the temple found its way centuries later into the Gospel of St. Luke, just as the story of the flight to Egypt appeared a few hundred years later in the Gospel of Matthew. The story is written in the stars. It can be read there again. The evangelist did not take it down. He probably forgot, so it had to be filled in later. The professor warmed to his subject. He gesticulated with his short arms and rocked back and forth on his broken chair. He spoke of the Aztec and Inca prophecies that were used to such advantage by Cortez and Pizarro. He quoted examples from late Roman history and from the Middle Ages to prove how horoscopes had always proven true. As long as people did what had been written, he went on talking without stopping for breath, intent to make a full use of this unusual opportunity, gushing on like a waterfall. Frank Braun put his hand on Dr. Cashell's shoulder. I have to interrupt you, Professor, he apologized, but I have an appointment. But the goddess Labartu, the professor pleaded, I haven't told you yet how the Phoenician Astarte. Some other time, Frank Braun said. Some other time. I really can't stay any longer today. Will you have luncheon with me, Doctor? Lottie Van Ness asked while she adjusted her hat. You can tell me all about it then. Tell you about it, he wondered, but are you interested? She smiled. Yes, I think so. I will tell the doctor all about it afterwards. Professor von Cashel went to look for his hat and found it at last in the waste paper basket. They drove off together in Lottie's car, stopping at Tiffany's, where she got out and came back after a few minutes with a little box in her hand. She opened it, took out a narrow golden chain from which a small crystal was suspended, and showed it to the professor. I had this made. Do you know what it is supposed to mean? Dr. Cashel looked at the crystal. You had a griffin engraved on it, he said slowly. A griffin. Have you a baby? Frank Braun laughed. A baby? No, I should say not. What made you think so? The professor explained again in his lecture tone, with his finger on his nose. This is a Venetian superstition from the Trecento, and was probably brought over from Syria by the Crusaders. This thing is supposed to bring ample milk to women. Lottie Levy nodded as she put the chain around her neck. You are right, Professor. Frank Braun stared at her. You, Lottie? You need milk? Yes, she said quietly. Milk for my child. Lots of milk. Red milk. Oh no, it's time. Nonsense, Frank Braun thought. Foolish nonsense. But he could not get rid of the thought. Again and again his eyes wandered to the barrel which Lottie had given him, and he remembered the old stones in her breastplate. The next day he again descended into Cashel's cave. Tell me, Professor, he asked, is it possible that precious stones actually have the strange properties which superstitious people have ascribed to them throughout the ages? What I mean is, do you know of any actual case? Do you consider it really possible? Professor Cashel coughed. Why not? Every child knows the strange properties of minerals. Have you never picked up iron nails with a magnet or dropped sodium or potassium into a wash basin to watch it burn? All children play with mercury, which is always in a liquid state, or set fire to magnesium because it burns with a brighter flame than daylight. Aren't these marvelous properties? Practically every mineral has its marvels, small or great, only we know so little about them. All metals oxidize except gold, which does not combine with oxygen. Think of the emanation of radium, or consider iridium, which does not dissolve in any acid, not even in aqua regia. And what about Iceland, spar with its double refraction? What about tourmaline, which becomes electric through heating, and topaz, which can be electrified through rubbing? Hornblende does not burn. Meerschaum is hygroscopic and turns into a jelly when dissolved. There are marvels wherever you look. But what about their supposed healing properties? Frank Braun demanded. The professor laughed. Doctor, you must know that as well as I do. Have you never taken sodium sulfate, which is much more effective than castor oil? Have you never had anything to do with carbolic acid? And don't you know its disinfecting properties? Just think, what would medicine do without minerals? Caustic potash, caustic soda, silver nitrate all have a caustic effect. Millions of people use mercury, and many more millions eat iron. Carlsbad, Vichy, and all the other mineral waters are used for thousands of diseases, and there are still physicians, and good ones at that, who are firmly convinced that one can cure all the diseases in the world with iodine and arsenic. But then, Frank Braun said hesitatingly, then it would be quite possible that some of the strange properties which our ancestors ascribed to precious stones are true? Of course they are. Much of it is pure imagination, and some of it is childish, but a great deal is true. And you know, Doctor, after all, our so-called exact science is often also childish. It is foolproof only until we discover something to prove that it isn't. Young Rosius stepped over to Frank Braun's bed. It's noon, Doctor. Wouldn't you like to get up? Your man is waiting with your tea. Frank Braun nodded sleepily. They brought breakfast to his bed, and he ate and drank silently, trying to think. It had been like this for some time that he could never remember in the morning what had happened the night before. I typed your lecture, the secretary said. I woke up early, had a bath, and worked on the typewriter. I asked Fred to make me some tea, with your kind permission. Frank Braun slowly asked, "Did you take your bath here?" "Of course. Don't you remember that I slept here last night?" "On the sofa in the front room." Yes, he remembered now. He had come back late at night and had found Rosius waiting. There was the speech he had to make today, and about what it was about, anyway. What was it about, anyway? Never mind, he would remember it later, but that was why he had asked his secretary to wait for him. After he had come home, he had dictated for an hour and a half, pacing the room. Yes, and then he had asked the young man to stay right here to type the speech in the morning. Now he had it all straight. "You scared me last night, Doctor," the secretary smiled. "I scared you?" Frank Braun asked. "Why?" "You are a sleepwalker." Frank Braun jumped out of bed. "Nonsense." "No, it isn't nonsense. You came into the room and did something at your bureau. Something fell down. That woke me, and so I switched on the light. That didn't wake you, however. You stood there in your pajamas. Oh, man. With your eyes wide open, you were fumbling with something on your bureau. What did I do?" "Nothing in particular, I suppose. You just picked up a few things, scissors, combs. Then you pulled something out of your pajama pocket and put it back again. You also opened your razor and closed it. Was that all? And how do you know that I wasn't wide awake?" "No, you weren't awake," Rosius insisted. "I called you, and you did not hear me. So I got out of bed and walked over to you, but you did not see me, although your eyes were wide open. Then I took your arm and led you back. You were quite gentle and did not protest when I put you back to sleep. 2 minutes later, you closed your eyes and were fast asleep." "That was most sensible, at any rate," Frank Braun growled as he took his robe and went into the bathroom. He came back after a little while, very tired and not a bit rested. "Have we much to do, Rosius?" he asked. Then, without waiting for an answer, he continued, "Come, let's play a game of chess." He stretched out on the sofa, supporting his elbows on the cushions, and glanced through the papers, now and then looking at the chessboard and making a move. Then he asked Rosius to read the speech and corrected a passage here and there, but gradually he stopped listening and just dreamed. Abruptly he jumped up. "Bring me the blue dossier, Rosius. Will you please? The one in which we keep the anonymous papers, you know, threats and such things." "It is gone," the secretary said. "The other day you told me to destroy it all, so I burned it with everything that was in it. I did it while I was waiting for you." "Did I tell you to do that?" Frank Braun cried. "That was stupid of me, very stupid. Do you remember the letter we got a few days after I returned from Mexico? You know, the one that was written so mysteriously, warning me of a conspiracy against me." Rosius nodded. "Yes, doctor, I do. You thought a mad woman must have written it, and that it was just pure drivel. As I remember, the letter said that even if the men in this country were asleep, the women were wide awake, and that they would find ways and means, and that they had found them already, to put a stop to your activities and those of your kind." "Yes, that's the letter," Frank Braun nodded slowly. "Perhaps it was only the crazy outburst of an old maid who believed all the lies in the English papers like so many million others, and who now sees a vile murderer in every German, pardon. Perhaps, but perhaps there was something to it. You know, Rosius, I almost think I am afraid." The secretary laughed. "You, doctor? You afraid? If you are, I never noticed it before." "Neither did I," Frank Braun shrugged his shoulders. "At least not when I was awake. But I believe I am afraid when I sleep." He was silent for a time, then he continued, slowly and deliberately. "I dream in my sleep. Formerly, I used to dream only when I was awake, and then I was really thinking on daydreaming. Now it is real childish dreaming. I dream when I am fast asleep, and it is always the same. I dream of a wound on a woman's breast and of red, dripping blood. I don't like these dreams." He paced the room with quick, nervous steps. "And this sleepwalking last night, who knows? It may not have been the first time. Am I a neurasthenic? hell is that? Neurasthenic adolescent, an anemic schoolgirl, an hysteric matron in her menopause, or a moonstruck woman who is having her period. No, damn it, it is fear, I tell you, plain, common fear of something. He stopped pacing and lit himself a cigarette, and this fear must have a reason. I am sick, you know that, and I have been sick ever since I came to this goddamn city. I am not sick now, not at this moment, but just a minute ago I was, and perhaps I will be again tomorrow. It is a strange disease, and nobody knows anything about it. I, least of all. 7, no, 8 physicians examined me from head to toe on Mrs. Van Ness's instructions. They could find not a thing. A little nervous weakness, they say. That is just the phrase. I shouldn't smoke so much, but I know that myself, without asking a specialist. No, that kind of science isn't going to help me. He was silent again, thinking. After a pause, he continued, It is a tiredness that has no reason, a physical weakness, sometimes a dizziness that passes quickly, all without any apparent cause. But my real symptom is this feeling of absolute emptiness. It feels as if I did not have a drop of blood in my body, as if the blood in my veins were decomposing, as if something were sucking me dry, just as children make a hole in an orange and suck it until all the juice has been drained. I am the orange. He threw himself down on the sofa, lighting another cigarette. I am afraid, he emphasized. This one fact is certain. I am not afraid in the daytime, at least not yet, but I am afraid when I am asleep. Therefore, this fear must be a subconscious thing, something instinctive and therefore real. But if it is, what am I afraid of? He stared at his secretary. Tell me, do you believe it can be some slow poison? Ernst Rosius laughed, a bright young laugh. I shouldn't be afraid of that, doctor. We aren't living in the Middle Ages any longer. Frank Braun turned on him sharply. Oh, aren't we? And I tell you, the world has never been as insane as it is today. You read the paper, this this slaughter of hundreds of thousands. When has the world ever seen such wholesale murder? And why? What for? Every government uses the same stale phrases for the benefit of its school children, but that does not make it less absurd. No, our insanity is much more fantastic than at the time of the Inquisition, or when the raging hordes of flagellants roamed through Europe, turning the world into a madhouse. Believe me, Rosius, New York is the most romantic city in the whole world. It is still in the darkest Middle Ages. But what makes it so disgusting here and what robs it of the Renaissance patina is that it is all covered up by the greasy butter sauce of Anglo-Saxon hypocrisy. Look at the muckrakers and reformers who hound every outspoken word, every advertisement in the newspapers, who prosecute peddlers because they sell pictures of ladies in flimsy draperies. Look at these teetotalers and holier-than-thous who make blue laws, who close saloons in front to walk in by the back. Yes, it is the Inquisition of the Middle Ages, but it is not strong and cruel as it was in Spain. It is cowardly, narrow, and mean. One thing is certain, nothing, absolutely nothing, is impossible in this immersed city, in this giant garbage can in which the refuse of the whole world is assembled. He laughed loud. We too are also in it, you and I, but it is good for one's soul to realize once in a while where one really is. It helps one to escape if there is an opportunity. Otherwise, one's soul would get poisoned imperceptibly. You see, Rosius, we get used to it, don't we? And then one gets to feel quite comfortable in all this mud and dirt. He got up, opened a window, and then turned back into the room. If we have all the rest, why not poison too? If the Medicis and Borgias could do it, the New Yorkers certainly can do it just as well. They even have their orgies, although they are lacking in style and taste. He laughed as he came back to the sofa. Tell me, have you ever been to an orgy here? Yes, Rossius said, at least to what we called an orgy, with beer or whiskey, with girls and singing. Where are my invitations? Frank Braun interrupted him. Get me one from the Moon ladies. I must take you along to their annual affair. Rossius looked for it. Here it is, he said at last. It is for the 19th. That was the day before yesterday. Sorry, Frank Braun said. Too late, but we will go in the late fall or winter. Remind me of it when we get another invitation from them. The mail? Rossius asked. Do you want to see the mail? Frank Braun shook his head. No, not now. Later. Anything else? The secretary thought for a minute, reached into his pocket, and produced a sheet of paper. I forgot about this. It is the song you wanted about the Immaculate Conception. I went to the library yesterday and looked up Saint Ambrosius. It gave me a lot of trouble, but here it is. Frank Braun read it loud. What the hell is that? Kind of looks like a piece of a leaf. Fit porta Christi pervia, referta plena gratia. I'm not reading that. I don't know what it means, so you can read it if you want. This is beautiful, he said. It is magnificent. Isn't it amazing, the power of imagination in these men of faith? Who could do that nowadays? Render an abstract thing so forcefully, make it so real. The creative power in these men makes the most improbable, most impossible, the most incomprehensible seem so natural and logical. And all through the sound of a few words. Ernst, Rosius said, I tried to translate it last night while I was waiting for you. Read it, Frank Braun nodded. So the secretary began, Thus did the Virgin's womb become the door, through which he came into this vale of tears. Not bad, Frank Braun said when Rosius had finished. You were a little free in your interpretation, but you caught the meaning. Your translation certainly sounds Ambrosian. Thank you for the kind acknowledgement, Rosius laughed. But tell me, Doctor, why did you want the song? And why, Ernst Rosius, did you translate it? Frank Braun retorted. Because you had nothing else to do? Certainly not. There are dozens of books here that would interest you and that you could have read, and the report for the committee, which for 3 weeks they have been asking, you haven't even started it. Instead, you sat down and wasted an hour trying to render a mystical Christian poem into tolerably good modern verse. Why did you do it? I don't know, Rosius confessed. I don't either. Probably some god wants us, you and me, to contribute our share to the medieval witches' Sabbath that is going on in this city of New York. The grayish golden colors are lacking, and so fate orders us to provide them. All right, that's all. That's all, bros. Chapter 8. Hyacinths will be next time. How many pages is that chapter? Seems to be a lot. No? 16 pages. That one's much shorter. All right, bros. That's all. Maybe I'll play the spring song again. Put you to sleep. Where the fuck is it? Oh, I already. No, that's right. It's in my files. Files. Download. Ba 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 ba.
It's in the air, it's in the world. All of the dreams, hearts are singing are there. Spring has come, love has begun. All of the frozen hearts are free. Spring, spring, snows have passed, the winter's gone. Beautiful flowers grow to pick for my love. Spring is here, flowers are ripe, giving their fragrant signs of life. Spring, spring, spring begins the life of love. Spring, spring, spring awakes the hearts of men. Birds chirp their songs